Welcome back to Talk Tensors, ready to dive into some more cutting-edge machine learning research.
Always. What do we got today?
Well, we're taking a look at a paper that's been getting a lot of buzz about using AI to diagnose brain cancer from MRI images.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
It is, and the results are pretty remarkable.
I bet. So what's the main takeaway? What are they trying to achieve with this?
I think one of the most exciting aspects is the focus on explainable AI, or XAI. It's not just about building a powerful diagnostic tool. It's about making sure that tool is transparent and understandable.
Right. Especially in medicine, that trust factor is huge.
Exactly. And, this paper couldn't be more timely. Diagnosing brain cancer is a really complex process, often relying heavily on, specialized radiologists.
And those specialists aren't always available, especially in areas with limited healthcare resources, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where AI has the potential to really change things. Imagine a deep learning model trained on thousands of MRI images. It could potentially help identify and classify tumors with incredible accuracy.
Even in places where they might not have access to those specialists.
Exactly. It's kind of leveling the playing field in a way.
Absolutely. So how did they train this model? What kind of data did they use?
Okay, so they used a data set of over 6,000 MRI images from hospitals in Bangladesh, categorized into 3 types of brain cancer: glioma, meningioma, and then a broader category just labeled brain tumor.
Bangladesh. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's significant because it highlights the growing need for these AI-powered diagnostic tools that can work effectively in diverse settings.
Makes sense. You don't want a tool that's only accurate for a specific population or in specific circumstances. You need it to be robust and reliable across the board.
Exactly. So for our listeners who might not be as familiar with deep learning, let me try and explain how these models actually work. Imagine the model as like a master detective, trained to pick up on subtle patterns in images that even an expert eye might miss.
I like that analogy. A detective searching for clues, except in this case, the clues are pointing to different types of brain cancer.
Precisely. And the specific type of deep learning model they used here is called a convolutional neural network, or CNN. They're especially good at analyzing visual data like images, kind of like how our own visual cortex processes information.
So it's mimicking the human brain in a way.
Yeah, in a simplified way, of course.
Yeah.
But it's designed to capture those same kinds of features and patterns.
Fascinating. So they've got this CNN trained on a diverse data set. What were the results like? How did it perform?
Well, out of the 9 different CNN architectures they tested, things like DenseNets, ResNets, MobileNet, exception DenseNet 169 came out on top.
DenseNet 169, huh? I've heard of that one. What kind of accuracy did it achieve?
Nearly 99.83% in classifying those brain cancer images.
Wow, that's impressive. Almost perfect.
It is. But here's where it gets even more interesting. They didn't just stop at getting that high accuracy. They wanted to understand why DenseNet 169 was so good. Deep learning models can be a bit like black boxes. We know they work, but it's not always clear how they're arriving at their decisions.
Right, like what specific features or patterns is it picking up on?
Exactly. And in medicine, especially when we're talking about something as serious as brain cancer diagnosis, understanding the why behind a model's decision is absolutely crucial for building trust.
Absolutely. You need to be able to explain why the model is making the diagnosis it's making.
And that's where explainable AI, or XAI, comes in. It's a whole field of research focused on making AI's decision-making process transparent and understandable to us humans.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together. It's not enough to just have a powerful AI. You need to be able to peek inside and see what's going on.
Right. So in this paper, they used several XAI techniques, things like GradCam plus ScoreCam and LayerCam, to basically visualize what DenseNet 169 was focusing on when it was making its diagnoses.
So instead of just getting a yes or no answer, they could actually see which parts of the MRI images the model was paying attention to.
Exactly. It's like being able to see the model's thought process in a way.
That's wild. And what did they find when they used these techniques? What was the model focusing on?
Well, the XAI visualizations showed that DenseNet 169 was picking up on these very subtle patterns and features in the MRI images that were indicative of each type of brain cancer. It's really remarkable.
So not only is the model accurate, but it's focusing on the right things, the things that are actually relevant for making the diagnosis.
Precisely. And that's a huge step forward, both for AI and for healthcare. We have this powerful AI model that can classify brain cancer accurately, and we can actually understand its reasoning.
It's like we're taking the black box and making it transparent.
Exactly. And that transparency is crucial for building trust and getting these tools adopted in the real world.
Absolutely, but I imagine there are some limitations to this research as well, right? No model is perfect.
You're absolutely right. The data set, while valuable, is still relatively small and focused on specific types of brain cancer. Plus, they only used MRI images. There's a lot of other information that could be relevant for a diagnosis, like genetic factors, patient history, other types of scans.
Right, it's like trying to solve a puzzle with only a few pieces.
Exactly. But even with those limitations, this paper lays a really strong foundation for future research. It shows that AI can be a powerful tool for brain cancer diagnosis, and that we can achieve both high accuracy and explainability.
That's a powerful combination for sure. And it makes you wonder, where do we go from here? What's the next step in this research?
Well, before we jump into the future, I think it would be helpful to take a step back and look at the history of AI in medical diagnosis. See how far we've come and what led up to this point.
That's a great idea. Understanding the history gives us some context and helps us appreciate just how significant these advancements really are.
Exactly. It wasn't that long ago that using AI to diagnose diseases seemed like science fiction.
It did, didn't it? So, how did it all begin? What were those early attempts at using computers for medical diagnosis like?
Well, they relied on something called rule-based systems.
Hmm?
Essentially, experts would try to, codify their knowledge into a series of if-then statements that a computer could follow.
Ah, the good old days of expert systems. I remember reading about those. They were pretty groundbreaking at the time, but I imagine they had their limitations.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They were very brittle, and they struggled to handle the complexity and nuance we often see in medical data. I mean, the human body and its ailments just don't fit neatly into a set of predefined rules.
Right. It's like trying to write an instruction manual for the human brain.
Okay.
Where do you even begin?
Exactly. It's a recipe for frustration, to say the least.
Yeah.
So how do we move beyond these rule-based systems?
That's where the magic of machine learning came in. Instead of relying on explicitly programmed rules, machine learning algorithms learn from data.
So instead of telling the computer exactly what to look for, we're basically saying, here's a ton of data. Figure it out.
Exactly. And in the context of medical imaging, this means feeding the algorithm thousands of labeled examples, say MRI images of brains with and without tumors, and letting it figure out the patterns that distinguish them.
It's like, it reminds me of how we train sniffer dogs.
Sniffer dogs.
Yeah, you give them a bunch of samples, you reward them when they identify the target scent, and eventually they learn to recognize that scent even in new, unseen samples.
That's a great analogy. And with the rise of deep learning, a subfield of machine learning, we've seen even more remarkable progress in medical image analysis. Deep learning models, especially those convolutional neural networks we talked about earlier, have proven to be exceptionally good at this, sometimes even surpassing human performance.
It's amazing to think about how far we've come. We've gone from trying to write that brain instruction manual to letting the algorithms learn directly from the data. And now, with deep learning, it's like we've given those algorithms a supercharged boost.
That's a great way to put it. This evolution has led to some really impressive results in medical imaging. We're seeing AI being used to detect everything from skin cancer to eye diseases, and now, as this paper shows, brain tumors with incredible accuracy.
It's really exciting to see AI being used to tackle these real-world problems and potentially improve people's lives. But as these models become more complex and powerful, it seems like the need for explainability becomes even more critical, right? We need to be sure that these systems are making decisions for the right reasons, not just spitting out diagnoses based on some hidden logic that we don't understand.
You're absolutely right. That's why research like this paper, with its focus on XAI, is so crucial. It's not just about pushing the boundaries of accuracy, it's about building trust and transparency into these systems. And that's essential if we want to see these AI-powered tools widely adopted in healthcare.
Speaking of pushing boundaries and exploring new possibilities, I think it's time to transition to our favorite segment, novel notions. This is where we, let our imaginations run wild and explore some of the more speculative but potentially groundbreaking ideas that this paper inspires. You're ready to dive in.
Always. This is the part where we get to dream big and explore what the future of AI in healthcare might look like.
Okay, so here's a thought. What if, in the future, We could combine the power of deep learning with the insights of human biology to create AI systems that not only diagnose diseases, but also predict their progression and even suggest personalized treatment strategies. Imagine an AI that could analyze your medical images, your genetic data, your lifestyle factors, even your microbiome, and create a personalized health model, almost like a digital twin of your own body.
Wow, that would be incredible. It'd be like having a crystal ball for your health. You could see potential problems years in advance and take steps to prevent them, or at least mitigate their impact. And it's not as far-fetched as it might sound. We're already seeing the early stages of this with research into those digital twins you mentioned. Researchers are creating virtual representations of patients that can be used to simulate different treatment scenarios and predict outcomes.
It's mind-blowing to think about the possibilities. But how would we even begin to build such a complex and comprehensive AI system? It seems like it would require massive collaborative effort across multiple disciplines.
You're absolutely right. It would require expertise from computer scientists, medical professionals, biologists, geneticists, maybe even physicists. It would be a monumental undertaking, kind of like the Human Genome Project, but for health prediction and personalized medicine.
It sounds like a monumental challenge, but the potential payoff could be enormous. We could shift from a reactive approach to healthcare, where we treat diseases after they arise, to a proactive approach, where we prevent or manage diseases before they even manifest. Think about the impact on quality of life, longevity, and even healthcare costs.
Exactly. And this leads to another novel notion that's a bit more philosophical. What if these advancements in AI lead us to a deeper understanding of consciousness itself? If we can create AI that can simulate the complex workings of the human body and brain, could that shed light on what it means to be conscious? Could studying these artificial minds teach us something fundamental about our own minds?
That's getting pretty deep. It's like looking into a mirror, but the mirror is reflecting back something both familiar and utterly alien. It's a bit mind-bending, but I think it's an important question to consider as we venture further into the world of AI.
I agree. It's not just about building better tools. It's about using those tools to explore fundamental questions about ourselves and the universe we inhabit. And that's what makes this field so exciting.
Okay, before we spiral too far down the rabbit hole of existential questions, let's bring things back to the paper at hand. While this research focused specifically on brain cancer diagnoses using MRI images, I think the implications extend far beyond that. Can you zoom out for us a bit and talk about the bigger picture?
Of course. One of the most promising aspects of this research is its potential to democratize access to expert diagnosis. Imagine a world where this technology could be deployed in rural clinics, remote areas, or even on mobile devices. People who might not have access to specialized doctors could still benefit from potentially life-saving diagnoses.
It's like putting the expertise of a top radiologist in the palm of your hand, available anywhere in the world. That's a powerful idea.
Absolutely. And it's not just about access. Earlier and more accurate diagnoses could lead to significantly better patient outcomes. Catching a brain tumor in its early stages can drastically increase the chances of successful treatment.
So this research has the potential to not just improve diagnostic accuracy, but to actually save lives.
Precisely. And that's one of the things that makes this work so compelling. It's a fantastic example of how AI can be used to address real-world problems and make a tangible difference.
It really highlights the potential of AI for good. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listeners? Something to ponder as they go about their day.
Here's a question to consider. If AI can become this good at diagnosing diseases from images, what other human skills could it potentially master? And how will that reshape our world?
That's a thought-provoking question. It's almost like AI is challenging us to reevaluate what it means to be human, what skills are uniquely ours, and how we'll adapt to this rapidly changing landscape.
Exactly. And that's what we're all about here on Talk Tensors, exploring the frontiers of machine learning, grappling with the big questions, and hopefully sparking some insightful conversations along the way.
Well, you definitely sparked some insightful conversations for me today. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's always a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Talk Tensors. Until next time, keep those brain synapses firing.
Of course. One of the most promising aspects of this research is its potential to democratize access to expert diagnosis. Imagine a world where this technology could be deployed in rural clinics or remote areas, or even on mobile devices. People who might not have access to specialized doctors could still benefit from potentially life-saving diagnoses.
It's like putting the expertise of a top radiologist in the palm of your hand, available anywhere in the world. That's a powerful idea.
Absolutely. And it's not just about access. Earlier and more accurate diagnoses could lead to significantly better patient outcomes. Catching a brain tumor in its early stages can drastically increase the chances of successful treatment.
So this research has the potential to not just improve diagnostic accuracy, but to actually save lives.
Precisely. And that's one of the things that makes this work so compelling. It's a fantastic example of how AI can be used to address real-world problems and make a tangible difference.
It really highlights the potential of AI for good.
Mm.
Before we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listeners? Something to ponder as they go about their day.
Here's a question to consider. If AI can become this good at diagnosing diseases from images, what other human skills could it potentially master? And how will that reshape our world?
That's a thought-provoking question. It's almost like AI is challenging us to reevaluate what it means to be human, what skills are uniquely ours, and how we'll adapt to this rapidly changing landscape.
Exactly. And that's what we're all about here on Talk Tensors, exploring the frontiers of machine learning, grappling with the big questions, and hopefully sparking some insightful conversations along the way.
Well, you've definitely sparked some insightful conversations for me today. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's always a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Talk Tensors. Until next time, keep those brain synapses firing. It's like putting the expertise of a top radiologist in the palm of your hand, available anywhere in the world. That's a powerful idea.
Absolutely. And it's not just about access. Earlier and more accurate diagnoses could lead to significantly better patient outcomes. Catching a brain tumor in its early stages can drastically increase the chances of successful treatment.
So this research has the potential to not just improve diagnostic accuracy, but to actually save lives.
Precisely. And that's one of the things that makes this work so compelling. It's a fantastic example of how AI can be used to address real-world problems and make a tangible difference.
It really highlights the potential of AI for good. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listeners? Something to ponder as they go about their day.
Here's a question to consider. If AI can become this good at diagnosing diseases from images, what other human skills could it potentially master? And how will that reshape our world?
That's a thought-provoking question. It's almost like AI is challenging us to reevaluate what it means to be human, what skills are uniquely ours, and how we'll adapt to this rapidly changing landscape.
Exactly. And that's what we're all about here on Talk Tensors, exploring the frontiers of machine learning, grappling with the big questions, and hopefully sparking some insightful conversations along the way.
Well, you've definitely sparked some insightful conversations for me today. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's always a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Talk Tensors. Until next time, keep those brain synapses firing.